Hi everybody, my name is Gary Froiland and I sure do enjoy picking and grinning. But something else I enjoy is wood carving. And I've carved my instrument cases, and so when I do music I put them down in front of me and people enjoy seeing the carvings. And they were asking, can you show us how to do your carvings on a video? So that's what I'm going to do right now. This case is my banjo case and I carved it out of basswood. And I made the case this shape because I had my saw in there also, and I did the carving first, and then I built the case around it. I'll show you inside. So I made the case wider right here so I could put my musical saw in there, and wider this way so it would hold both the banjo and the saw. So in this case I carved a train coming out of an old mountain tunnel, going across an old bridge with a waterfall in the river. On my guitar case, I carved our front porch of our house that we live in. So I put a bass player there, a banjo picker, a guy playing guitar, and this girl plays the fiddle, but she's doing a good old jig to the music. And I call my music homemade music. So on this one, I didn't build the whole case, I just took the whole cover off and embedded the carving in the cover and put the hinges back on. So the first thing you want to do when you're going to do a carving, figure out what you want to do. And I do relief carving, is what it's called, relief carving. And figure out the size and the shape you want. Now I get my wood, I got it from a sawmill. It's just rough cut basswood. And since it's rough cut, it's rough. And this has not been planed. So therefore, it's 1.25 inches thick, 1 1/4 inches thick. So I got a lot of depth I can work with in my carvings. And then of course you need to make a pattern. So I make a pattern full size, like this. Here's the idea for this banjo case. The Banjo Express, and I got a stagecoach with horses and coming into a town with a train at the end over there. So we put this on the board and take tape and tape it down and trace it on the board with carbon paper. I tape it down in different places, but I want to leave a space so I can get the carbon paper under there to trace the pattern onto the board. There, and take a nice ballpoint pen and start tracing the pattern on. You could just basically get the outlines of everything and then keep your pattern to look at because you'll be cutting some of the lines away. So just get the basic outlines and that'll be good enough. I'm just trying to get an idea where things are, basically. Now we're done with tracing it so we can take the pattern off. And you see lightly the outlines. It's rough sawn wood, so they're not very dark, but you can see where you are to start with. And I'll take a scribe and little compass and go around the edge to get my edges real even. So here are the basic tools that are used for different categories. This one is a very straight one, and here's a smaller, very straight gouge. I don't use those very often, because if you do, when you gouge something out, you're going to make little edges on the side that you don't want in the wood. This is another little straight gouge, but it's at an angle. You'll sometimes use that if you're making letters or something around the edges of the letters to make them real sharp. That's a pretty handy tool there. I very seldom use the straight ones, but I sometimes use this one. These I use a lot. These are almost straight, but they're just a slight curve to them. So when you're doing some carving, you won't get an edge cutting into the wood. You'll get a nice even cut. There's a large one, smaller one, smaller, smaller, and smaller for the different areas where you want just a slight curve. Then there's the gouges here. Here's a great big gouge. I used that a lot with this mallet, with this antique potato masher, to get out the wood in the beginning stages of carving, to get rid of all that excess wood you don't want. And I just hammer away and just let the chips fly. And then go back on the other side, follow the grain. And these gouges are one of the most important tools you use. So I got larger ones all the way down to very small. And then I even got a very small palm carving tool that you can really get in there and get the fine details. When I use that, I usually kind of rock back and forth with these gouges that cuts the wood as you go. And I always do it that way. Sometimes I'll use the mallet and cut a section, but often I'll just twist and push with my palm. And also I'll use one of these for the edges down here, when you get these edges to make a nice little pattern along the edge. And then the other kind of tools I have are some V. I got a large V tool and a small V tool. And I'll use those for like cutting out the letters and different things like that. And so the main tools, you don't need all these, you just need a few of these here, especially these, a couple of small curved ones, and maybe a V-shaped one. And then around the edge, to get this pattern around here, I got some of these tools that I take a regular steel hammer and hammer bang, 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 and keep turning this tool, which has a lot of little bumps in it. And that gives a nice pattern around the edge. Then when I stain it, it all has a nice tone to it. So now I'm ready to start carving. The first thing I want to do is get rid of some of that wood that I don't need in all the real deep places. So I use some of these big tools here, maybe the straight one a little bit to go around those mountains a little bit. And being careful where the grain is. And then I can use this big old chisel here and start getting that wood out that I don't need. There's with the grain, and we'll come this way. Come over here. Just get rid of that excess wood. Let the chips fly. So go ahead and get all these deep areas cut out with the bigger tools, and that goes pretty fast. And then you want to use the smaller tools as you get closer and closer to detail. The closer you get to detail, the more careful you want to be. Always paying attention to where the grain's going, so you don't split out more than you want to. You can go across the grain sometimes, if you're really careful, because that'll tear up the wood some. Maybe smaller taps, otherwise you'll tear the wood up. Now I think I'll go around this ribbon a little bit. Now I see the ribbon goes this way, right here, and the grain is this way, so I want to cut this way on this edge, and this way on that edge, because the grain's going this way. They want to split that grain. We want to cut through there like this. So I'll use one of these V-shaped ones, and on this side go here, and on this side go that way, so I work with the grain. I just keep going on there. On the other side of the ribbon, I'll go this way, because that's the way the grain lays. There, and that's getting pretty nice, so I just maybe start up here and do more. And then on the other side of the ribbon, I'll go this direction, because then the grain will be in my favor. I just clean that all out there. You always want to watch the angle of your tools also. Pay attention to the angle, so you're taking out just as much wood as you want to. There, it's looking pretty good. You can always take out more, but you can't really put wood back in unless you want to glue it back in. Back and forth. The grain is going this way, you know, as you can see. Being very careful not to go too far. Might want to use this tool here, this a big tool, but it's got a slight angle to it to cut some of that excess away. One thing about using some tools, a lot of times when I start out, you kind of rock them like this, and that kind of cuts through the grain, and you go kind of across the grain and everything if you want to, and just to kind of get your first outline, I like to rock that tool back and forth. Gives you a nice control over what you're doing. Carefully watching the grain, watching your angle, watching your curves, watch the tip of what your tool's doing, and then adjust your angle or adjust the different kind of angles for what you're doing with whatever tool. One thing you want is total control over your tool at all times. And that may be the way you hit it, how hard you hit it, or how whatever. Or if you're cutting like this, I hold my hand here as a brake to keep it from going too far. So I have a little more pressure on this hand because I want to do some cutting, but I use this hand to hold it back so I don't do something I'll regret later. And so just use this hand as a brake, and so you really control exactly what that blade's doing. There are some times when you want to use your tool upside down to go around curves, for example. Whoops, I was just cutting here and I knocked a piece out that I didn't want to cut out. Well, I got to cut a little deeper then. And I'm trying to get rid of this rough wood, and also right here the crack where I glued the board together, getting rid of that glue and so forth. Just take a little bit of it at a time. There, now I'm getting down to the bare wood. There's just a little crack there, but it won't show much when you're all done. At least I got rid of the glue and that rough sawn lumber. It's kind of a little tricky spot right here because the grain's kind of going both ways, so I'll tap real shallow little beats to kind of chop through that grain. That makes a nice smooth cut there. I'll clean it up a little bit, but yeah, so working with the grain that way was really tricky right in that area. So small taps, just cut through that very gently. One of the main rules in wood carving is don't put anything in front of the blade that could bleed. Keep your hands back there because once in a while you're going to slip and you don't want to carve into your hand. I usually hold my chisels like this and my hands are away from the blade. You don't want to get cut. If you're doing some carving in the round or something where your hands are going to be kind of in front of the blade a lot of times if you're holding something, so you can buy some gloves that are mesh, metal mesh that will keep you from getting cut. As you may notice, one thing I've done with my tools is color coded them. So these are all the gouges, all the red ones, and the thicker the band, the thicker the gouge. And so that makes it handy for me to just look at something and sound. This is a V tool, and it's a bigger, wider black band I put on there. And here's a small one, small V tool with another narrower black band. So I can tell what tool I got. The green ones here. Now those are very gentle gouges. And so that's a good idea. Then you can, just at a glance, you kind of know what kind of tool you're looking at or looking for, and grab the right one in the right size whenever you need it. When you get to doing the fine details, take your time, have all kinds of patience. And when you do these little cuts like this, go really slow, keep my brake on, rock back and forth because I'm going through two kinds of grain here, and I want to go real slow and just rock it back and forth to cut through the grain because the grain's going in both directions. Just got to have patience. Chisel here, and I'm just going to rock back and forth and not hammer or anything, just rock back and forth to cut through that grain and to clean that little edge up there. I've noticed some of my tools are getting dull because you have to push too hard when you carve. They're not cutting that well. So I even see some of them have little nicks in there because I've used these tools for other things in wood. If it's got some nicks in it like some of mine do, you can go on a white wheel like this and be sure you go into the wheel like you see here. And so when you see the sparks come along the top edge a little bit, then you know you're at the top edge. Then you can use the polishing wheel, put some honing polishing compound, and then sharpen it up that way. Be sure you have your tool this way so you don't cut into the wheel. Also, You can use some sandpaper here, like 400, finer and finer sandpaper. You can use, and then work on your tools to get that nice edge. When you get that to get pretty sharp, and you can get like a 1500. Go ahead and get that sharper and sharper and sharper and hold that edge. And then as a last step, you can take some polishing compound and put it on cardboard. And then for a final deal, just go around here. And you can see the darkness is coming because we're getting some metal off there. So we're getting that nice sharp edge. Boy, that'll make your carving a whole lot more fun. Yeah. Ooh, that's really good and sharp. Here's some trees I was making, and I got some more over here I got to make. And I used this tool here to make some branches. And then here's some tools you can get at a hardware store very cheap. They're nails. And I just took the nails and poked a bunch of holes all around there just to make little dents to look like leaves. But I like to go around the edges with kind of a scalloping to kind of frame it. This is really across the grain, and so here I can use a mallet, but I think I better just, on this side, just twist it and cut the grain as I go down because it's really rough. That was pretty good. Maybe I'll cut this one a little deeper. Just keep twisting it. And that cuts through the grain pretty good because they're cross grain. As you cut away your lines, as you dig deeper, you'll have to redraw some. And so a handy tool is the dividers, so you can get things centered and so forth. And I'm going to make some doors here now for this livery stable. And get the idea where the door should be by the tool called the dividers. Now I'm working on some bushes down here. I use this tool to kind of go around and make some shapes of bushes. Just make some bush shapes. Go around like that. Down here I have a road, and then down here I want to put grass. So I use this tool and just kind of poke and make all the grass. Well, hi, I'd like to share the progress on my carving here. Here's how it's turning out so far. You know, every day when I work on it, I write down the date and the many hours I work on it each day. About an average of 4 hours every time I work on it. And I got 52 hours in it now. And so this is how far I've gotten. And you always run across some problems, you may anyway. And one of the 3 problems I found was the knot. There's a big old knot here. And this dark vein here is part of the knot. It's really hard wood, hard to get into. And the knot itself, I found out it kind of explodes. When you hit it, it starts breaking up just like glass. So you got to be really careful when you're working with the knot. The second problem I found out, I started cutting into there and I found some wormholes. Some worms had gotten into the tree, and then I looked on the back and I could see where the wormholes are. There's here, 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 here. And so I found some tunnels and everything. So I found some wormholes. You have to kind of work around them or carve into them or whatever. The third problem I found out, when I work, I get chips all over the place, and I tip it upside down and bang on it. I could hear some kind of a noise. I thought, what's that noise? There's a crack. Then I see there's a crack in the wood here that goes a long ways. I thought, oh no, I got a crack in the wood. So I'm carving, you know, in disregarding the crack for now. I'm getting pretty deep in there. I think I've only got like a 1/4 inch of wood left in the deepest part, and so that's as deep as I'll go. And I'm just kind of careful. I don't want the whole thing to crack. The crack comes way over to here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish the carving, and then I'm going to stain it. I'll show you how I do that. And then I'm going to varnish it, 3 coats of varnish, and that'll seal it really well. So what I'm going to do then is going to turn it over, and I'm going to use some quick poly on it. This quick poly, you can use it on buggy. I've used it on buggy wheels. If they're rotten part of the buggy wheel, you can pour this stuff in there. It'll just make it like plastic, just petrify that rotten wood and make it usable again. So this is a 2-part. It's actually made for horse hoofs if a horse gets a crack in his hoof, you can mix this half and half and pour that on the horse's hoof, and it just plasticizes it. And it works good for wood, like I mentioned, so I'm going to pour some of that on here and just let that soak into the wood and just petrify the rest of this wood here so that crack won't be a problem anymore. This is such good stuff. I've even used it on the guitar. I had a guitar here, a wonderful guitar, but I had a problem with this bowing of the top, and I could not keep it from bowing. You could do all kinds of things, put another rib in there, whatever. It just had a problem of bowing, and so I thought, I'll use that quick poly. So I took the strings off and tipped it up here and took a little cup and poured some quick poly in there and let it go around inside and petrified that wood. It's been okay for years since I did that. You run into things, but I'll continue carving, and I want to let you see the results as soon as possible on my banjo case carving. Well, I'm getting close to being done with the carving now. Getting all these parts done. I use this tool here to go around and get all these little edges, get all around to make it kind of consistent. Now I'm going to take this tool and get all this rough wood out of there so I can get the edging bumps made. So now I'll take this tool with the bumps on it and go around the edge and keep turning it to try to make a pattern there. Keep turning it back and forth and keep hitting that to make these little bumpy areas to make a pattern. One of the main tools I use for detail is this knife right here to cut around things that are real high detail, so I can cut the grain, so I can use the other tools then to cut the lot of the wood away. Well, it's time now to put some words on here. Of course, when you do your carving, you cut all your lines and all your pattern away, so I cut this out again. I'll tape this on here so I can trace the pattern of the letters and the words back on the wood. So I'll use some carbon paper and put that, trace the words back on there, and then I can start carving the words. So I've got the pattern transferred to here now, so I think I'll start using this one. Now the grain's going this way, so I got to cut through that grain, and I better use this knife here because in very small cuts to cut through that grain. Just keep going. I'm going to make my letters with a nice little bevel inside. So just got to keep doing that. Cut deeper each time. And come the other way. Take it easy at first. Then you can always cut deeper. That piece is just about loose now as it goes at angles. There. See there? Then you just clean up the bottoms, cut a little deeper. Make some nice beveled letters. Well, I got the carving all done now, and I've got just over 78 hours in it. So you see the detail as we go along the town with the stagecoach coming in there. As you can see, it's pretty deep carved. The next step will be to stain it, and I use this stain right here. It's called gun stock, It's a real nice tone. And what I do is I use a small paintbrush and paint some of it in full strength, and then I thin it down 50% with paint thinner and do the medium tone, and then I thin that down again to 50% to get the lightest tone. So I got 3 different tones of this stain. Part of the carving I'll paint, so I'll use some Testors paints for that part. Then the final step will be to put a clear coat on there. I use Bartley Gel Stain Clear Coat Gel. I put it on with a paintbrush and it gets on quite thick. And I do 3 coats of that. And that will really seal it. Well, here's the progress now. I've got the staining and the painting done. Now, the carving itself took 79 hours, and then it took 18 hours to do the staining and the painting. Now, when I did the staining, that kind of comes first. I do some of the dark staining first. I use a real fat brush and go around these big areas here. And the fine areas, I use the smaller brushes, like inside the letters here, with the dark stain. And then with the painting, I use these different ones here, almost always these small brushes here, to do the painting and all the details here. Now, the next step would be to put this varnish on. I use Bartley Gel Stain. I found out about this from a cabinet maker who makes kitchen cabinets, and they use this on a rag, and they put 3 coats on their cabinets. And one thing I like about it is in between, you know, you don't do any sanding. I don't like sanding. I don't do any sanding on my carvings or in between the varnish. So anyway, I know this is a good varnish because I had a good test one time. Let me tell you about it. After I finished this carving, a guitar player saw it. He said, "Oh, would you make me one for my guitar, this same pattern?" So I did that. Now, a lot of my carvings was done in the van. When my wife was driving, I'd be doing carving. So I have this case in my van along with the new board I was carving on. Well, we went to church one Sunday night. We came out of church and my van door was open. I thought I shut my van door. Well, somebody broke in and stole my banjo case. Well, since I just had this for reference in the van, the thieves stole it, and when they opened the case up, there was no instrument in there, so what did they do? They just got rid of it. They threw it in the river. Well, since it was wood, it floated. So in the meantime, we called the police and they made a report. 4 days later, the police called. "We found your case." A lady saw it stuck in some tree branches behind her house in the river, and she said, "Looks like something kind of valuable back here." So the police went there, and well, there's that guy's case. They called me up. I got the case back, and it was all waterlogged and warped. I couldn't even close the cover. So anyway, now in the case I did have my musical saw, and when it was in the water 4 days, the varnish of the saw handle came off. However, the varnish on the banjo case was okay. Now after about 5 weeks, the warp went out of it because the water dried up, and so I was able to close the cover again. So that's a good test for this varnish, being in the water 4 days and not coming off. When the saw handle itself, the varnish did come off. So let's get to varnishing here. The last step in doing the carving. In this can here. As you can see, it's really thick. It doesn't even pour out. It's just like gel. And I like that. So I'll use this big paintbrush for most of it. Paint it all on there. At the moment, the parts that is stained is kind of dull looking because it soaks into the wood. The part that's painted is all glossy. When I get all done, this will be kind of a semi-gloss. The whole thing will be all even. The varnish will make everything look smoother too, and any little imperfections in the carving or the wood, that'll all kind of even out and look real nice when I'm done. I put quite a bit on, then I just kind of thin it out and get a nice layer on there. And when I'd like to maybe keep the grain of the brush strokes to fit the grain of the subject. When you do around the painting and stuff, don't waste your time. Go fast because this could dissolve some of the paint and smear it. You don't want to do that. So you want to kind of go over fast, get it smooth quick, and then finish up. Okay, I got the first coat of varnish on there. I use this big fat brush for all of it, just getting all the cracks. So you go over pretty fast. It just took me a half hour to do all this work. And so this will dry. This will take a little longer for the first coat because it's soaking into the wood. It may take a day or two to dry, and then after that, the second and third coat will go pretty fast. They'll dry quite quickly. Well, thank you very much for watching my video on the way I do wood carving and my hobby of it. And I highly recommend it. It's a good hobby. And check your area. I bet there's probably a carving club in your area, and you can get ideas and have good times with those other wood carvers. And you know, you get yourself a set of tools. My first carving was with my jackknife. Okay, then I went to the hobby shop and got a little X-Acto set for my second carving. And then when I went to Germany one time, I got some real nice tools. But anyway, books, you can get hundreds and hundreds of books, and you can spend the rest of your life reading. But I recommend a book right here. This is a book by Everett Ellenwood, The Complete Book of Wood Carving. 275 pages for under $30. Oh, you can't beat it. It tells you how to do everything from what kind of trees you want to use, a history of wood carving, carving tools, carving accessories, sharpening your tools. He's an expert. He's even got a DVD on sharpening tools. And so step-by-step projects in here. I highly recommend this book. This is really all you ever need. It's got everything from chip carving to in the round carving and stuff like that. Full colors, beautiful, beautiful pictures and drawings. So anyway, I hope you have fun. Get yourself some carving tools and get yourself a piece of wood and see what you can make out of it.